Well, thanks very much, Micheál, and thank you, Joe, for inviting me here. I think it's 7 years since I was here last, and there's always something biblical about 7 years. But I started with the proper way. I got doused in the sea this morning, in the cold sea, like John the Baptist, by Joe, who put us all to shame by swimming out to the very furthest buoy as we floundered in his wake. But no, it's great to be here. I think, Ireland has made extraordinary changes in the last decade, and many of them would have been almost unthinkable 10 years ago when we looked at Ireland, the state it was in, close to bankruptcy, huge levels of unemployment, huge levels of emigration. And through the ingenuity of the Irish people, its enterprise and its workers, we have got back to full employment. Equally, we've made changes that are almost unthinkable 10 years ago in terms of our constitution, changing to allow gay marriage, changing to alter the Eighth Amendment, which had been these were parts of Irish society we didn't dare talk about. And we have not only talked about them, but made profound changes that says something new about who we are as a people. But I think we can and must address the greatest challenge facing humanity, and that is the challenge of climate change, if we are to show that we have that capacity to change and to respond to a new need for the Irish people to go in a different direction. And I think because we've made those other changes, I think we can have confidence of our capacities. I suppose it's true to say that we haven't been without ambition in the past, in that I suppose at the start of this decade we set a target that we would reduce greenhouse gases by 20%. The present predictions would suggest we'll be only down by 1%. You might say 95% off target. So, having the ambition is not enough unless you create the delivery. And it's very clear that we did not make the structural changes in our society and in our economy to allow us hit that target. So we have to approach this in a different way, and that's what we have done in this instance. We have approached this in a different way, and the foundations that make this different and give me confidence that this time we will deliver everything we've committed to are, firstly, we've sought to build a level of shared understanding and a lot of common ground on what needs to be done. That started with the Citizens' Assembly, ordinary people taken in off the street, if you like, to review the evidence and point the way to radical change. That was followed by an Oireachtas committee chaired by Hildegard Naughton with representation from every party, which spent hours going through the evidence, hearing, and came out with a very ambitious report. Not only did it come out with that report, but that report was unanimously endorsed by the Dáil in declaring a climate and biodiversity emergency. So that creates a foundation that is new. The other thing that's different this time is that as part of the new climate plan and building on the Oireachtas committee, we are now putting what you might call a legislative sources of momentum into this. There will be statutory climate budgets that ministers will have to address. There will be a much stronger climate council vetting and screening what's being done and evaluating it for the public. There will be a very strong Oireachtas committee with the sort of teeth that the Public Accounts Committee and those of you who are public servants, it's probably the only area where you ever see a Secretary-General quake in his boots when they have to go before the Public Accounts Committee. It will be the same in terms of the climate budget. So we're creating a framework that makes people like myself, ministers who have responsible office, Secretary-Generals, departments, public bodies, genuinely accountable. With a transport allocation, an agricultural allocation of carbon use over a 5-year period, a very significant change. And the third thing that's different is that this time we've adopted an approach which actually coincidentally I started when I was last here, and that was in the Action Plan for Jobs, an approach that I suppose that the Americans would say you're biting with the President's teeth because you create an implementation model that's centred at the heart of government in the office of the Taoiseach, with the most senior public servant in the land, Martin Fraser, chairing an implementation group that sees to it that every part of the public service at least steps up to the plate to deliver its approach. As Joe charitably said, or was it Micheál, that I have a lot of experience in politics, most of it, let it be said, in opposition. But one thing that I have learned, or a couple of things I have learned, you have to have ambition that everyone can share. You have to get people out of the stands as commentators on what the game is about and onto the pitch as players. And you have to have that authority of biting with the President's teeth. And I think we have created a framework where those are possible. And I think that's what makes me very optimistic about this. The changes that we're seeking are profound. And I'm sure there'll be people who say in the audience we're going too fast, and there'll be many others who say we're going far too slow. But what we've done is we've tried to identify the path that has the least burden for Irish people, but still hits our target of 2030 and beyond that, contributing to a near zero emissions from the European Union by 2050. But to give you an idea of the scale of change, we're looking for 5 times the level of renewables. So wind farms, onshore, offshore, solar, that's going to be 5 times greater in just over 10 years' time. We will have 20 times the number of heat pumps in our homes and our buildings. We will have moved from having 98% of car purchases being fossil fuel cars to zero by 2030. We will have 500,000 extra people either going by public transport every day or by active transport every day than we have today. We'll have 500 million additional trees planted. We will have no non-recyclable plastic. We will have 5 times the number of sustainable energy communities. And, I could go on. But I think it does give you the scale of the change that we need to make in lots of sectors across our economy, a very diverse range of sectors and asks. And I think achieving these changes will challenge us in many ways. The sort of infrastructure we build. We will have to be building far more wind farms. We will have to see more interconnectors. We will have to see building out and strengthening of our grid. We will have to see more people involved in microgeneration. These are big changes. We'll also have to accommodate another 1 million people in a way that's compact, connected and sustainable and regionally balanced. Not something that we've been good at doing in the past, where we've been scarred by ribbon development and the growth of Dublin at the expense of other regions. It'll also be challenging for many people who will have to change the habits of a lifetime. We hear very much from people in the farming community about how change is going to confront them. But also it will change many of our ordinary ways of doing, the way we handle materials, the respect we have for the materials we use, the disposal society that we have allowed develop will have to be reversed. So a lot of the habits we've grown used to will have to be changed. We will also have to mobilise very large sums of money to make these changes. Many of them, 3/4 of them indeed, pay for themselves over their lifetime. So even if there was no climate crisis, they would be the right things to be doing. But nonetheless, they require people to find money up front to do things in their home, in their business, on their farm, wherever they live, in their travel arrangements and so on, that will cost money. And the state, while it can support them and incentivise, it can't pay for all of that change. So there are many elements of this journey that are going to be challenged. And I was recently reading a guy, Mike Hulme, I think is his name. He wrote an interesting book. Now, I have to admit I haven't bought it yet. I've only read the summary. But he's asked why we disagree about climate. And I think he talks about these challenges we have to meet, as he says, in a crowded planet inhabited by a quarrelsome species. So these are big, profound changes we're going to have to make in our behaviour. And we have the capacity, for arguing about them rather than doing them. And we have to find a way of achieving these changes. So I think this is a really profound test for policy frameworks, how we frame, for example, building compact and sustainable cities. That's a real challenge. We haven't cracked it in the past. We have the ambition this time round, but we have to make it happen. It's going to be a real test, a profound test of politics, because When I did politics, the definition was politics was the capacity to resolve conflict. This was about resolving conflict. And there's no doubt there will be profound conflict to be resolved. We will need to find just transitions for changes that are confronting people, particularly people who are most exposed, are least equipped to make the changes that have to be made. It will also be, I think, a huge test for our international structures of cooperation, because, as you know, there is what the economists call the free rider problem. If one country opts out and says we do nothing, they get the gains from the climate abatement that others do without contributing. So this is a profound challenge to international organisations as well. And it will require changes in the way we think about aid, about trade, about research collaboration, about compacts that are made internationally and how that conditionality can lock people in to share this journey in a fair way. I think it's a real opportunity for European Union leadership at a time when I think the Union needs a cause and a purpose that can reach out to ordinary citizens and show that it can bridge that huge gulf between, I suppose, the importance of the European Union and its birth out of conflict in Europe and its profound achievements, but at the other side, the sense of lack of ownership that has evolved. This is a real opportunity on the international stage. So the plan that we've put together it recognises this balanced nature that we have to achieve, a social contract, if you like, that we have to strike with people. And the elements are there. The least burden and the most opportunity is what it's founded on. The fairness, the concept of just transition and being fair to different people who have to make the journey. Ensuring that every section of our community is contributing and no one saying, it's not for me, let someone else do it. And developing is this sense of engagement with people, which we need to develop better structures for continuous engagement with people on this journey, so that the action plan model, which is built on sustained action, adaptation to change, continually evolving, but that has to be based on good, strong channels of feedback, and those are things we're seeking to build. I recently were reading Arnold Toynbee. You might ask who he wrote back in the 1940s, probably a very profound historian in his time. But one of the striking things that comes out of his book is that the greatest strides in the history of civilization have been made by societies that have been confronted by huge challenges, which created the need to change and to change radically. He cites many examples of it, like the Egyptian civilization on the Nile, where they had to drain what was previously a swamp, or else face extinction. This, in a way, is the same. We're facing a really profound challenge, and that challenge, it taps into the most distinctive human qualities, our need and our capacity for creativity, for cooperation, and for solidarity. And we have to build that in this plan. This isn't my plan or the government's plan. This is a plan that we all have to breathe life into. We can't do that in a plan written in Adelaide Road. It has to be as much a plan owned by people in Donegal or in Sligo or in Kerry or in Cork, and that people feel a sense of ownership. I think it's important to say, and I'm sure I'm getting to the end of my tolerance, the Chair has been very kind not to ring a bell. I think it's important to think this isn't about Ireland improving our rankings in some UN or European Union league table, and that we've fallen behind and we need to get up a few notches. This is far more profound. This is about the resilience of our homes, of our farms, of our enterprises. We will not be capable of surviving and thriving in the world that will be on our doorsteps in 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 years' time. This world is changing, and if we do not act now and take the actions now, we will not be passing on to our children homes and farms and enterprises that are resilient in the face of that change. So this is very much about ourselves. This is about what we need to do for those who are coming after us. I'm sure people on the top table here will, as Greta Thunberg pointed the finger at our generation and said, you've let us down, you need to fix this. And I think that is true. We need to fix this. But the other thing that I'd say is that it isn't all about cost and hardship. At the end of this, we'll have cleaner air, we'll have warmer homes, we'll have enterprises and farms who have adapted to the sustainability nature of the planet and how they can use that to build sustainable enterprises. We will have new opportunities in new walks of life that can be opened up by a decarbonised society. We will have cracked the issue of the circular economy and our profligate use of materials. Indeed, I think we will, when we come to look back on this period, and if we make the change successfully, people will look back in disbelief at the model that we now tolerate. So I think this is a profound time and an opportunity, I think, because I haven't seen in my time the level of political consensus, maybe not agreed on every action, but there is a large level of political consensus. But having that political consensus in the remoteness of Leinster House is a very different thing from making a reality here in individual homes and businesses across the country. So we have a big challenge on our hands, but one that I think the ingenuity of the Irish people is absolutely up for, and we have proven our capacity to make changes that would have been unimaginable in the past. Thanks very much.